Nothing is more key to the MAGA movement than hypocrisy. It is a party that claims to back the blue until they pardon 1,500 January 6 cop-beating insurrectionists. It is a party that claims to be pro-life until they cut your Medicaid. And it is a party that claims to care about election fraud until they are voting illegally, which is exactly what we saw out of MAGA and what Mike Johnson is now scrambling to cover up with his own members breaking the law. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, there are a lot of layers to this story in the threat that Mike Johnson is now making, trying to cover for MAGA. But before we can get into it, we need the context that gets us started. It's from Congresswoman Brittany Peterson right here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with my newborn Sam, who's just 4 weeks old. Unfortunately, I wasn't given the opportunity to vote remotely after giving birth, but I wasn't going to let that stop me from being here to represent my constituents and vote no on this disastrous Republican budget proposal. Republicans and Trump promised to lower costs on day one, and instead their priorities have been focused on ripping healthcare away from kids, seniors, moms, and others who need it most. And this is not going to save money. It includes people like my mom who work for hourly wages but are still unable to afford healthcare. When you don't have access to healthcare, you show up in the ER. This is going to have a huge burden on our hospitals and unfortunately will have skyrocketing costs. I agree, Sam. Hospitals will bear this burden. It also slashes SNAP, taking food off the plates for seniors, veterans, and kids, all to fund tax breaks for billionaires like Elon Musk while increasing our national deficit by trillions of dollars. How can anyone show their face in their district after voting yes for this?
There is a lot of MAGA hypocrisy that takes place in this really interesting and important story that I'm very excited to share with you all, regardless of how gross Mike Johnson is for what you will see that he did. But it starts with this right here. The pro-family party doesn't want to allow new mothers and, of course, new fathers as well to be with their children just for the first 12 weeks after they're born. That's such a ridiculous ask. Elon Musk is constantly talking about the declining birth rate, although he's probably making up with that with all the kids that he's having illegitimately. But seriously, this is the hypocrisy that we see from MAGA. It is crazy, especially because it's a law that they've put in place that they don't actually seem to care about in the House. And someone we love on this show, Congressman Jim McGovern, broke that all down. And then we're going to get into how Mike Johnson is trying to stop us from talking about it.
A mandate is like you won by 20 or 30 or 40 seats. You guys lost seats in the last election. Republicans have the smallest majority in nearly 100 years. And so Republicans need every single vote to pass crummy partisan bills like this one. They can't afford to have any of their members miss a vote. And Mr. Speaker, when Democrats were in charge, when I was the chairman of the Rules Committee, we actually put in place proxy voting in response to a worldwide pandemic. Anyone could cast their vote remotely if they had an excused absence. Because it's 2025 and not 1725, and we actually can use technology to vote remotely. The backlash we got from Republicans on this was insane. You know, they went out to the press and they said that proxy voting was illegal. It's unconstitutional. It's this, it's that. And guess what? They did it themselves. Speaker Johnson voted remotely 39 times. Let me repeat that. Speaker Johnson voted remotely 39 times. And he voted remotely so he could go home early. He voted remotely so he could visit school kids. He voted remotely for an entire week once. He just didn't show up. Then, despite him voting remotely dozens of times previously, when Johnson became Speaker, he ended remote voting because he said it was, quote, unconstitutional. Unconstitutional. Yet he voted remotely 39 times. So imagine my surprise, Mr. Speaker. Totally blew my mind this week when I see that Representative Byron Donalds somehow voted, and he wasn't even here in this building. because last week Congressman Byron Donalds was at HBO studios in California, not on the House floor. But somehow news reports say he also voted here on the House floor at the same time. And this is so interesting, Mr. Speaker, because I have a tweet here from 2 years ago when Representative Donald says, and I quote, "Today, House Republicans will vote to end proxy voting once and for all."
So no surprise that Byron Donalds, one of the worst hypocrites and one of the most disingenuous and shameless liars in the MAGA movement, is happy to break a law that he claims to care about, voting by proxy out in LA. What is this? This is like voting by proxy, breaking the law, doing it in California. Isn't this what Republicans say that Democrats do? It's starting to sound like this crazy idea of a Democrat that Republicans try to push. But Mike Johnson, very upset, not with Byron Donalds, with people who want to be able to vote after having newborns. And we see so in this article right here. Florida Republican Congresswoman Paulina Luna is accusing leaders from her own party of threatening and bribing other lawmakers to block her effort to allow proxy voting for new parents in the House of Representatives. "I'm not going to be bought. I will tell you that I've now been reached out to multiple times offering me positions on different committees, and I don't want it because this is bigger than me," Luna told reporters on Thursday. "It's actually about changing the institution for the better." Luna, 35, became the 12th lawmaker to give birth while serving in the House in 2023 and appealed to GOP leaders to adjust the rules so that new parents can cast votes remotely around the birth of a child. Both former Speaker Kevin McCarthy and current Speaker Mike Johnson rebuffed her. "I'm a father. I'm pro-family. The Republican Party is pro-family. We want to make it easy as possible for young parents to be able to participate in the process," Johnson said earlier this week when asked by NPR about the push to change the rules. "But proxy voting, in my view, is unconstitutional." Johnson's office declined to comment on allegations by Luna about bribes or perceived threats to other lawmakers. Luna is teaming up with the Colorado Democrat that we saw in this video, Brittany Pearson, who is the 13th lawmaker to deliver a baby while in office. They used a procedural tool called a discharge petition to gather support from a majority of House members, 218, to force a vote on their measure, which would allow new parents to vote by proxy for the first 12 weeks around the birth of a new child. They reached the threshold earlier this month, and under House rules, they can call it up for a vote on the floor as early as next week. Luna says GOP leaders and their allies are using a mix of threats and horse trading to try to get lawmakers to derail the vote. She says she was even offered a committee slot on a panel that she was initially rejected from earlier this year. Luna didn't specify that the speaker was personally making any offers or threats, but said multiple people have reached out to her. Luna also reported that Tennessee Representative Tim Burchett, one of the 11 Republicans to sign the discharge petition, was offered a vote on 2 of his bills in return for opposing the proxy voting bill. Yeah, somebody said, well, if we get those bills on the floor, would you vote against Luna? Burchett recounted to reporters Thursday, "I was like, voting against pregnant women? Are you all crazy?" Luna said so-called frontliners, GOP lawmakers who represent swing districts, have been threatened with the loss of fundraising help in their district for supporting this legislation. She stressed this is not a partisan issue and believes even those who haven't publicly backed the bill or signed the discharge petition would ultimately vote for it. This is just absurdity. It is absurdity that this bill would not be passed. Now, this bill, as I stated in that article, is not allowing anyone to vote from any place, any time, just, sipping Mai Tais, hanging out, not in their district, not in Washington, casting votes on a computer freely, whatever that, I don't care. No, this is for new mothers and new fathers around the birth of a child. Why should they be pulled away from their newborn who would need them? It's unbelievably ridiculous. And Mike Johnson threatening Paulina Luna, also completely absurd, especially when Byron Donalds did this. He broke the law, and no one seems to care about that. The threats are just directed at Paulina Luna. I'm not going to say she's a person that I necessarily like. Her views are not great, supporting a fascist as president. But she does make a lot of sense right here.
We've made the changes to ensure that it is in line with the Constitution by removing the quorum clause. It can be done. It will be done. And as you are seeing right here, these are all the times he voted by proxy. So I guess the question is now what? We are going to be bringing up the vote to the floor. There is massive bipartisan support, not just with the Democrats, but Republicans. We actually were collecting more signatures, and they actually had to cut off the petition at 218 because that's the max number that's allowed for the petition. So we're hoping that, again, they don't work against the entire conference. But remember, it's going to pass whether it's now or next Congress. The fact is that Democrats had vote by proxy without guardrails. We have guardrails in place specifically for new members. And then I would also argue that that argument in itself is pretty ridiculous, given that, again, he voted by proxy.
Mike Johnson himself has voted by proxy. What? This is just absurd that they would push this type of hypocrisy, but it's not, because it's MAGA. And we're not really surprised by that. This is the populist party, the anti-corruption party. Those are votes just like, and they're letting Elon run roughshod, which is exactly what Congressman Greg Casar was calling out right here.
Casar, he is a member of the House Oversight Committee and Subcommittee on Delivering Government Efficiency and the Progressive Caucus Chair. Congressman, good to have you. So you have fiercely condemned Elon Musk's efforts to dismantle government programs and cut the benefits out there for Americans. And his foray into government is not your first exposure to Musk. Your Austin, Texas district includes his largest Tesla factory. So I'm curious your response to these protests, as well as the vandalism at Tesla dealerships across the country.
Well, look, we don't support vandalism, and there's no Democrats that support that kind of behavior. But what we do support is people expressing their First Amendment rights. And we all are deeply concerned. The richest man on earth is firing veterans, taking their salaries and trying to hand it out in the form of tax breaks to his billionaire buddies. Elon Musk is talking about how Social Security, in his words, is a, quote, Ponzi scheme, and he wants to eliminate billions of dollars from Social Security, deny seniors their benefits by calling them fraudsters, and channeling money to himself in the form of government contracts. So we need to be really clear with folks that what you're feeling right now is an unholy alliance between corporate greed and corrupt government. And the Democratic Party's message, their number one message, should be breaking that unholy alliance so that we have representative government again, and so that government can take care of the everyday person, not have an economy rigged for Elon Musk.
Hypocrisy is just baked into MAGA. It's just what they're all about. But it is incumbent upon us to call it out. That is what we're doing on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around at the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.